Hello, this is my second video on the Anbu profiler, so if you have no idea what I mean by second, go and look at my channel on YouTube. If you ignore all of the old MMO videos, please, you'll find another introduction to the Anbu profiler for Laravel 4. What I want to do in this video is go into detail on how modules are constructed, or just give a quick introduction to how they're constructed, rather. So, as I mentioned in the previous video, all of these sections down the side are modular. These are all plugged in one by one, so I could pull one of these out if I want to. And I'm going to show you how they work now, okay? So modules are very similar to a cross between how commands and service providers are created in Laravel. I wanted to keep the syntax for them fairly familiar so that people who are used to Laravel can jump right in and get started. So it's a mix of a command and a service provider. This could all change, so don't start building modules yet. I've got some other stuff that I can do to it, and yeah, the architecture may change before we go to stable, so don't go crazy. Right, okay, so let's jump right in then. Okay, we'll take a look at the logger. Here we go. I've got this logger up here. So Anbu modules extend this abstract class called Anbu modules module, and you can override a ton of properties and methods from this abstract class, or you can implement them. For example, this is when I say that it's similar to a command. This is what I mean. You can override these properties here. So you give your module a name, and that's the pretty name that will appear on the tooltip in the menu. You give it a slug. That'll be used for the URL of it. Description isn't currently used, but I figure I'll probably throw it in there somewhere eventually, so it seemed like it made sense to me to add it. Here we have icon, which is actually a font awesome icon class name. So where you have fa-icon name here, you just put the icon name here in this property, and it will use that for the side menu. I figured I'd use font awesome because it's something that everyone knows and uses, and there's a fair bit of variety there, and they're easy to use. Okay, so next in this one we have a register method. So if you've ever created a service provider, you'll probably know a thing or two about register. And in fact, this is called around the same time, but instead of being called at register, it's called at boot. So it's the boot method of the service provider when this is executed. This gives you a really quick, simple place to register anything that you want to happen before the request. So it could be preparing your module. It could be in the case of this log entry, you see where we're listening for a log event. People have seen the first video, and now I'm going to have my screen covered in tweets. So yeah, you see we're listening to an event here. We're prepping this array index and that kind of thing. So everything that happens before the event. You can actually do whatever you want, because the module, much like a service provider, gets this instance of the app or application class, which is the heart of Laravel, the main container. So you can hook into any event you want. Hell, you could replace things if you wanted to with Anbu. It's almost like a second service provider set. You could do whatever you want with that. And down here, this is just something that's for this module, so you're welcome to define your own methods. Just a quick way of adding that event is the callback that I needed for listening to Illuminate logs. And then you've got after, which is the opposite of the register method. I might change these to before and after, just for clarity. Originally I left it to register to make it more like a service provider, but they sound pretty strange when you say them both together. After is the after hook, so if you've used app after before, this will be executed once the response has been sent, basically, or around that time. So what I'm using it for here is to update this badge property on the class with the count of the logs. So the badge is this. The badge is obviously this number that you see in the circle here. So the rendering of all that stuff is done for you. I've done all the front end hard work, I guess, to do that. Sorry, I fiddle with stuff, and yeah, you won't have to do much else. So if we have a look at the base class, you can see exactly what's on there. So let's go into module. So this is the abstract class for a module. So we've got the properties we defined up here. Template lets you define a different view, which we'll see in a moment, for rendering your content area. So that view decides what appears in here, for example. So you render that stuff yourself. You could probably reuse a lot of the CSS I'm using for other modules, and later you'll be able to add your own. I'll talk about that in a second. But you can do what you want with that. And then we've got the widget. This is going to be, I've got to make some changes to Anbu to get this to work, but eventually you're going to be able to inject content into this widget area and also change the badge there. Well, the badge will run off the same number, but this means that you can put your own things into the dashboard. It's going to be a cool place to put a quick overview of what you're doing, but yeah, it's loaded the same way as the other template is. And then you've got in menu. You could always hide a module from the menu. Sometimes it's useful. You might have a module that just runs as like a data collector from another module. So that's useful to be able to override. This I'll talk about later. Data is an array that gets collected and serialized when your module is run. So this is the information that's saved for the next request. It's also the properties that are available to you in your view when you render your module. So everything that you need to store and you need to use to render your view, you're going to put it in data. Okay. Global might go, but right now it's where you put information that might be to explain this kind of stuff goes in global. So things that are in the wrapper template, I may change that. I'm probably going to change that, so I'm not going to go into in depth on that. And then we've got the application instance that gets handed to it at the register time of registration. So you've got the register method that you can override, the after method, and then I've got a bunch of getters and setters for cool stuff, and you can set setters for the application instance. This is to get where the current class is. I had to use reflection because of the whole inheritance thing. And then these are properties that will be pulled into the storage. You probably don't want to override this stuff down here. You probably never want to override that. This is just the inner workings of Anbu. So here we have the template that's for this this module. You see that it's relative to the class that we created. So everything is relative to this class that you register. And we've got this view here where we're just looping through this logs array. So if we saw in the logger, we were adding things to data logs, and then suddenly in the template we've got logs which we can iterate through. So that's the serialized data that we've worked with, and it's a Blade template, and you can do whatever you want in there. That's fine. And that's literally all you need for a module. To register a custom module, there will be a config entry for it. But right now, I'm just going to go into the source of it. You'll see that there's these default modules. That's where I'm loading my own ones. But here you can see that they're we're merging them with the default module, so you can add additional ones on top. I might change it so that that's the default module, so that you can actually get rid of mine if you want to. It's something I may end up looking at, but yeah. Feel free to have a dig through this stuff. Okay, so yeah, your modules they're just going to be 2 files right now. So I realized that eventually people are going to want to start using images and CSS and JavaScript in these tabs. So one thing I'm going to be working on next, and hopefully get it in for 4.3, is the concept of an asset proxy. What I don't want you to be doing is having to do publish assets all the time. You know, the publish assets when you install a package that has assets that needs moving to the packages public folder. That to me is just a pain. I like things that are quick and easy to install. So all I want you to do to install a package is just register it by its class name, by its fully qualified class name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a controller that proxies assets to your own modules. So for example, we've got this assets array here, and this will probably change shape again. Anything in here you'll be able to get to via a certain Anbu route. It'll be proxied for you, and then you can pull them into your own views. So hopefully that's going to be really cool and make it easier. It also means that right now, and forgive this ugly file, but you know, it doesn't really matter because it's rendered locally. It doesn't have to be efficient because it's all local. But right now I'm using things like web fonts, and you know, pulling in Font Awesome, whereas I want to proxy the assets here as well, so there's no dependence upon the web. You can use it offline, that kind of thing. So yeah, if you're using Anbu at the moment and you see that, you know, things aren't loading, it's probably because you're either not online or you can't get to these assets. So yeah, ignore that. Ugly, horrible, and will be changed. This is a very quick project so far, so you know, this is the first evolution of it, and I can see it getting a lot better as I go along. So yeah, there's feel free to have a look through the modules that are here if you want to get an idea for how they work. Most of them are very similar, really, because they're just spying on events from the framework, or pulling out information for the framework and rendering them. So yeah, definitely have a look, but don't, like I said, don't start creating modules yet, because I'm literally 90% sure that this architecture is going to change, and I don't want you to end up coding things twice. Plus, I've got a bunch of ideas for extra modules. I don't want you stealing them yet, because I want to get there first. Nah, just kidding. Yeah. So there will honestly be extra modules for the release version. These were just to experiment with the core feature set. So yeah, I hope you enjoy learning how to extend Anbu, how to create modules that would be useful for your own apps in your teams, maybe at work, but also sharing things with the community, and building better ways of working with Laravel. So I hope you enjoyed this screencast, and thanks for listening.